2017-2018 CAFR is not yet posted on the website. My concern is that this is the latest it's ever not been available during the last 6 years. It concerns me. I sent an email to the finance director who said that it would be available at the end of March. When it didn't show up, I sent another email and got no response. So a lack of response is questionable, and I also worry about how the state auditor isn't being responded. This is a lot of financial information that's out there, and it's not available to the public, so it's a concern.
I appreciate you bringing that up. We actually received the hard copies of the CAFR, I think, yesterday. And so we're coordinating a date with our auditor to have a presentation to the council and the community so that they can go through the audit and make that presentation to everyone. So we're working on that right now.
Is there a date when it might be available?
We're hoping for the first council meeting in May.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Provide that, sure.
If there's anybody else that wishes to speak? Hearing none? We'll go on to public hearing. Item number 19.
Mayor, before you get started, I do need to recuse myself on this item as it is less than 500 feet from my residence.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The item before you has come as a request from the property owner regarding the Rancho McCollum project, which was approved by the Planning Commission in, let's see, I had it down here, May 15th, 2018, so last year. Essentially, it was comprised of two different development applications. One was a parcel map dividing two parcels into four, and the other was for a conditional use permit for a 7-Eleven and a quick quack car wash on 2.5 acres of that parcel map. So that came before the Planning Commission. There was opposition that was raised by a group called Concerned Citizens of Hemet, and even though the council, this Planning Commission, I'm sorry, is normally the final action on a conditional use permit and a tract map, it was appealed to the City Council. And on July 24th, the City Council upheld the Planning Commission's decision, and the appeal was denied. Subsequent to that time, and actually most recently, the city has received a letter dated March 7th, which is included in your packet, from the property owner, from the applicant, who is requesting that the city set aside or rescind officially those prior approvals, including the mitigated negative declaration that was prepared for the project, because they want to pursue a different project for the site. And because the City Council was the last final action on it, this is coming back before you as the council as a public hearing item in order to rescind that. So the resolution that's attached to your staff report, if you approve that resolution, that would rescind all those prior approvals, and it's our understanding that the applicant would be coming in shortly with a new project. We have not received anything as of yet, and then that would go through the normal course over again of any other project. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Where I live, come to think of it, I don't normally think of being only, 500 feet?
Yes.
Well, I don't back up to, in Seven Hills, I don't back up to that parcel, so I got to be more than 500 feet away. But I don't see where.
I believe, Mayor, that we did look at that when it first came to the council to make sure that you were outside of the 500 foot.
Yeah, and I thought I was, but the reason I question is because that's across from, it's across from Walmart.
Yes, it's at the southeast corner of Sanderson and Stetson.
So I guess I didn't think that Councilmember first of all, was within the 500 feet. Yeah. I mean, it just seems we're in the development where he is. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and here, well, they checked it, so, yeah. So he's over here. So I would have thought that further, but, oh my. Okay, so,
Also, I wanted to just call to your attention that we did receive a letter from Delano & Delano, which is the
Right.
firm that's representing the concerned citizens of Hemet, acknowledging that the request that's on tonight's agenda and supporting that rescission. And the applicant and their representative are also here tonight.
okay, so, is the change just simply Quick Quack will no longer be there?
All of the project approvals will be rescinded.
Okay,
So that's the parcel map, the tentative parcel map, the conditional use permit for both the gas station and the car wash, and the mitigated negative declaration.
and now I've lost my agenda on here. Does any council member have any comment to make? No?
My only comment is that, referring back to the public hearing that we had before on this regarding the appeal, if I recall, I think my comment was that while I may not have selected the project as what I would like to see there, I respected the property owner's rights to present a project to their liking as long as it met all the criteria, which it did. So I also respect their right to rescind the project and bring something back. So I look forward to hopefully a project that meets everybody's satisfaction.
So, at this point, if...
One more question. Were there any fees paid or anything that we're going to have to deal with? Did they get that far?
Well, there were application fees that were paid for the work that's already been done, so there's no refunding of anything there. But there's no development fees or plan checking or anything that have been paid yet.
That's what I was checking.
So, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody that wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Okay. So, may I have a motion?
Sure. I'll move to rescind the prior land use approvals for Rancho Mulholland project.
A second?
Please vote. And that passes 2-1, or 2-1 with one, 3-0, right. So, we don't account for his abstention, just because he recused himself. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Okay, item number 20,
Sure. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
engineering CIP update.
So as Steve Lariso, our city engineer, makes his way to the podium, we thought it would be a good idea to provide the community and the council with some of the updates that are going on as it relates to the CIP. And so we talked briefly earlier today about roadway conditions. Very proud to report that our engineering department has spent quite a bit of time developing RFPs as well as moving forward on some of the items CIP. And so today, Robert, Robert, can you make sure the presentation's good? Please, thank you. And so tonight we have Steve Lariso that is going to go over a few updates that we have. We're really looking forward to moving forward on some of the projects that we'll be talking about. The item wasn't discussed, but on the consent calendar there was an item that awarded a contract for pavement roadwork in the community. So we are happy to have that discussion for the council and the community so that we can talk about what's going on in the community. So with that being said, I will hand it over to Steve Lariso, our city engineer.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Thanks for letting me get through this here. My name is Steve Lariso. I am the city engineer currently for the city of Hemet. Met with you about a month ago. We were talking briefly about the Stetson Bridge. So tonight, I wanted to just share with you a couple items that we have. Right now, I have a map up on the wall that shows the status of paving projects that are going on either in design or in construction. And I can leave this here with the city clerk, and we can have it sitting up here, and we will update it on a monthly basis. We do provide that update to the city manager for his report to council. I'm going to say this doesn't work. So yeah, great, charts. Everybody loves charts. So very difficult to see, and I apologize for that, but I do have the information that I do provide to the city manager as well. The information listed on here is just showing all the different engineering capital improvement projects that we have currently going on, and they're funded from various sources, whether it's Measure A or the RMRA or SB1 account, as well as there are some DIF projects on here. The ones in green are strictly just street improvements, whether they're slurry seal or pavement rehab. The one basically third from the bottom was one of the ones that were on the agenda tonight in the consent calendar that was for a sidewalk project. So we're going to be rebidding that out very quickly here due to some irregularities we received in the bid. This is the same map that I have over here, but at least I was hoping it would be more blown up so you could see it. But hopefully you can understand the colors that we have in there. Obviously you have the 5 different districts, but we have the yellow streets, which those are currently, they're getting ready for construction, whether it's slurry seal or pavement rehab. The red ones are a little far and few in between because those are actually pavement rehabilitation. And you can see sort of in the central northeast portion of it, there's a couple major streets that are being rehabilitated. Those are under design right now, but I anticipate that you're going to have about 4 different projects that are going to be out for construction or in the process of being in construction within the next 3 months, whether that's slurry seal or pavement rehabilitation. This was important as we're going forward to show you what we have planned for this next fiscal year. We're already in the works of putting these projects together, and Mayor Pro Tem Brown, you were inquiring about some of the Measure A stuff, so I wanted to just make it clear that the Measure A projects, or any of the street projects except for RMRA, we've identified based on a Buckman report that was prepared back in 2016 and provided to the City Council. It identifies the various status of the streets, whether they're requiring slurry seal or pavement rehab or full R&R. So that's a citywide thing, and we utilize that list to determine which streets are going to be in line for what type of repair. Slurry seal is obviously the most inexpensive repair to be done, and it's, believe it or not, it's what we do to get more bang for the buck to make those streets last longer. If we could get on a cycle, that's really what we'd like to do, so we can have just the slurry seal going every 5 years or every 7 years, whatever we do, we hit that same area. But we'll get there. We'll see it eventually. But what I wanted to point out, oh, I'm sorry, back to the Measure A. Those streets that we've identified in the Buckman report, it can be changed. The only ones that are really we can't change without notifying is the ones that go to CTC, the California Transportation Commission, which are the ones that are going as part of the RMRA. It can be changed at any time, but we have to identify streets based on the Buckman report in order to send to CTC, in order to be in compliance. But Measure A ones, it's very, very broad on what we share with them up front, and you can see that in your staff report tonight for the Measure A and SB1 stuff. So I hope that kind of puts to ease some of the streets that you had questions on too.
Yeah, it does. Thank you for that. And the root of my question was just about flexibility because of changing circumstances that maybe were unforeseen 4 or 5 years ago.
You're absolutely correct. And if I can make just one more note about this current slide here. So for this next fiscal year, you can see that we have about $4.3 million worth of street improvements that we're doing for pavement rehabilitation, Measure A, as well as RMRA projects. And then that's going to get about 7 centerline miles of streets, depending on the width, but I mean, you can imagine that that's quite a bit. And then the slurry seal projects, we have about $1.2 million from Measure A that we're going to put out, and you can see how much of a difference that gets. So that whole $5.5 million worth of projects are going to be coming up pretty quick as soon as the new fiscal year starts. Of course, if the budget is approved the way you guys have requested. With that, I'm here for any questions.
You know, I can't thank you enough for this because we've been waiting for this for a while. And especially those of us in our districts where it's important for us to know what areas are being addressed so that we can inform our constituents. We haven't had the ability to do that. I'm really happy to know that, A, we have the map to go by, and we all know, and I guess my other question is, if this was done in 2016, the
Buckman report?
Yeah, the report that identified the areas that needed to be addressed the most. But since then, we've had some significant weather issues. Has that increased? I mean, because of those and the roads, everybody can agree that the roads here are terrible. and obviously needing maintenance, and thank you for moving forward on this. But again, the weather being as it was or is recently, which really hammered the roads even more in the city. How did that change? Did that change the priorities on some of those areas that had been identified?
Well, what it actually does is the report that I mentioned gives us a guideline.
Right.
It tells us, okay, these are the streets that we foresee based on the analysis that have been done of the roads. So even though that report gives us the guideline, we still have to go out and look at the streets, which is what we do prior to putting that on there, prior to putting the bid out. And for instance, in the slurry seal, if you notice, in the packet tonight, we don't identify the streets just right now. We're going to be getting that project out in the next couple months, and we're going to be looking through the streets to identify, or the list to identify, to make sure that those are still actually worthy of a slurry seal, as opposed to, well, it graduated into the worse off pavement.
Okay.
So that is a very valid question that we will look at before we put it out to bid.
Any other questions or comments?
I've got a comment, more of a plug for Hemet, because I was just out in some very expensive beach cities over the weekend, and our streets are far better than some of theirs. Just saying.
And I'm going to speak for one of my constituents. He's come several times to our meetings, that Mockingbird Lane, the street is falling apart. It's absolutely falling apart. And then also San Jacinto and Menlo, there are chunks missing. And I know our public works guys are out there filling it with that black powdery stuff that looks good for a few minutes, but it's causing major damage to cars. There's big chunks of asphalt missing. I mean, I've actually thought about taking like a little cement bag and just fixing it.
Could you tell me I got Menlo, but I didn't.
Mockingbird Lane.
I got that.
Okay.
Then after that.
Oh, Menlo and San Jacinto. That's the cross street. It's just the entire, you'll see it. You can't miss it. Just don't drive over it.
I'd like to add one also, as long as we're adding.
I mean, I don't want to be.
Lion between, mine's real bad too, but Lion between Stetson and the end of Lion, a couple years ago, that was scraped, but the slurry seal was never put on it. It just stayed rough road. And it's still rough. So if you'll look at that, I don't know why the seal wasn't put on, but I'm sure there was a good reason. So, and if anyway, if you did look at that, that'd be great.
And I have a question. Are we restricted to just road surfacing issues with what we do with Measure A? Or can we, do we have other alternatives to look at traffic control devices or lighting related to the streets?
The Measure A funds are primarily set aside for road improvements. We have, in other locales, gone as far as preparing pavement management reports. And I'm not certain if it involves, or if we're allowed to do traffic control devices, if it's traffic signals. I think we are. I'd have to confirm that with RCTC. It's not as unrestricted as gas tax, whereas that's used for a lot of different things. And then the RMRA funds are strictly for pavement rehabilitation, unless your PCI, your pavement condition index, is above 80, which, sorry, you're not at 80, you're a little lower than that. So, but the Measure A stuff is primarily for streets, but if there's something in particular, we could look into it. I don't remember off the top of my head the exact definition of what is allowed.
Yeah, I would appreciate it if you could. Robert can probably fill you in on a couple of locations that he and I looked at a while back that and I thought were in need of some updated traffic surveys because of the dynamics of the road utilization has dramatically changed, and I think we might need to look at updating that. So particularly a couple of intersections that have, one that didn't even exist a few years ago, and the other one has changed dramatically because of motorist behavior and utilization.
Understood.
I think too that with all the rain that we had this winter, that had a huge impact on a lot of our roadway surfaces. But I think we have a lot of staff that drives around town all day. I think that maybe if we can collaborate with them and make notes of some of the more severely impacted streets that need more immediate attention, because I know there's a lot of streets that had pothole repair. And I mean, when we had on Valentine's Day, when we had a flood, when I drove down Kirby Avenue, I'm seeing water like pouring out of the center line where the scene was, and that can't be good for the subsurface of the road. So, but I think we've got a lot of resources that we could probably tap into to find out what are some of the more pressing. Because I noticed that there's hardly any streets in my district, so they must all be great.
No.
And I'm
Again, thank you.
But thank you for putting that together. I think this is good for the community to see that we are actively working on getting streets fixed and doing repairs.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak on this item?
Sure. I just have a question on what determines, like, how deep does the pothole have to be for it to be slurry or for it to be actually repaired? Because at the end of my street, it's kind of a raceway, and they make that corner, and it's pretty much almost dirt. So I just have a question of what does that actually entail as far as, like, when you decide and where you decide and what neighborhood gets to be first?
May I speak to?
Sure.
Would it be okay if I answered that question now, or do you want to wait, or?
Well, maybe we can get his question and then answer them together.
Sure. It's different a little bit, but I just want to make sure, San Jacinto.
Okay, we need your name, sir.
Jim Welker. I just want to make sure that, like San Jacinto, from Florida to the graveyard there, that is city of Hemet's sphere of influence, but parts of that are county, and there are no sidewalks there. The road in there is presently being surveyed by the county, but throughout this city, there's spots like that that just get overlooked because of jurisdiction. And I'm not saying that the city needs to take responsibility for county.
Sir, can you address the council and he can listen to the question?
That at the same time,
Thank you.
the city needs to coordinate with those dead areas that are overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to address that really quick. Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem were in a meeting with our supervisor just a few weeks ago,
Yep.
and we told them that we were moving forward on some of these projects, and so we thought we got some input from the supervisor's office about some of the work that they were doing, and so we felt that it would be a good opportunity to potentially merge kind of the discussions as it relates to what we were doing as well as what the county was doing. So those lines of communication are open, and we are talking about that. Sure.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, now to address Ms. Gregory's question.
Yes, ma'am.
Or, excuse me, Mariana's question.
So the question was regarding how big does the pothole get before it gets slurry, if I understand correctly.
So you're going to swallow the card.
Typically, slurry seal, which is a very thin layer, it's almost like an oil because it is part oil, that gets placed on streets that have the ability to still have life to them. When you have the potholes or you have severe cracking, that is not going to get a slurry seal typically. Well, no, not typically. It won't get a slurry seal as far as when I'm putting these things together. It's just, you don't do that. The slurry is not going to solve the problem. The hole is still going to be there. Imagine painting the street or imagine painting a hole. That hole is still going to be there. So the slurry is only used for prolonging the life of an existing street. If it has the potholes or if it has severe cracking or chunks missing, that would be a candidate for rehabilitation, whether it's a grind and overlay or a full reconstruction.
That answer your question?
How deep does it have to be in order, I mean, I understand what slurrying is, but how deep does the hole have to be before
Okay.
you decide between slurries?
Okay.
I just wanted to thank the engineering department as well as Steve. I know it's been a collaborative effort with the engineering staff in moving these things forward, and it didn't happen overnight. So I just wanted to thank everybody and that operation for the work that they've dedicated to moving this forward.
I do have one more question for you about street repair and all that. So it's weird because my phone tends to listen to me when I talk and stuff, and so when I'm on Facebook and that, I always get these ads. And one of the ads that I see on videos are where they use this thing that sits on the ground and they slide it across a crack in the road, and it fills the crack with, I don't know what, something that fills the crack for street repair. Is that something that we do also? I'm seeing heads nod back there, but I don't like to take things too serious, but when I see the videos from street repairs, because I'm talking about potholes and stuff with, So is that something that's cost effective that we're doing to fill cracks in the roads to help last longer? And
Well, I wish I understood exactly what that product was, but I can give you a little bit of background on what we do to fill the cracks. So prior to doing a slurry seal, we will go out and fill the cracks with an oil emulsion that basically prevents or reduces the likelihood of the water after the slurry is placed to get down into the cracks, because that's what's actually causing the failure to the road. It's not the asphalt itself, it's the subgrade that fails, whether it's just a native dirt, which in a lot of cases, in a lot of older towns, asphalt was just put straight on dirt. And you can look at it, a lot of it is structurally still there. It's the asphalt that kind of broke out that needs to be repaired. But in the case of something that goes across the surface, it's actually kind of an interesting thing is what they take is a router of sorts, run it along the crack to route it out and clean it out, and they'll put the emulsion in there. That's prior to a slurry seal. So did it by chance have a name associated with it?
I don't, but I'm sure since we're talking about it tonight, I'm going to see it on my Facebook feed later. But I mean, it's the material. It's thick. I mean, it's runny, it's watery, but it's thick. But it fills the crack, and so that it brings the crack now up to the same level of the surface. And the guys that are doing it are some handheld thing that they just slide it across the road.
That's pretty much.
I mean, it's like a thing that they pour it into, and it fills the crack. And so I was just curious if that's something that we're looking into. And
Yes, we do perform crack sealing prior to slurry seal, and there are some cases where we can do crack sealing. If the road is still in pretty decent shape, we can go out and do some crack sealing. That's a even more cost-effective way of getting things done. But in all honesty, I'd like to go further and make the street even better by placing the slurry, because the crack sealing will only get you a little bit, whereas the slurry seal will get you the extra couple of years that you need to put it in a cycle. But by all means, we are looking at the different methods of what we can do, and getting more bang for our buck is something that we really have to look at based on, I mean, yes, you saw there's $5.5 million coming up for this next year, but that doesn't put a dent in the condition of the roads that have the current condition.
And we're getting SB1 funds also for some of this road repair.
That is correct. And that part of that 5.5 million, which was 1.36 blah, 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 blah million, is RMRA funds, which is, again, strictly for streets. But that's the one, if you look back in your agenda report for tonight regarding the resolution that you did pass, we had to identify clearly what streets we were going to do, because that's what's required of the SB1 Act, I guess. Yeah.
So, I know I've asked this question before, because when council goes to ICSC and we have the opportunity to walk the floor and see product, new product that's available, we've seen where slurry seal has the ability now to last up to 20 years by the product they use. So have we looked into any of those new products, and how cost effective are they based on, I know it would be more expensive, obviously, but sometimes, perhaps in areas that are very high trafficked areas, it would be reasonable to use a stronger product, which I know nothing about maintenance, so I only go by what they tell me when we visit these booths. But they do guarantee a 15 to 20 year lifespan. Oh, and Chris is back there laughing. So, just ask.
I can probably imagine why Chris is laughing, because somebody's trying to sell you a 15 to 20 year lifespan on slurry. So, I'll take it with a grain of salt, but I'll just give you some backup on it. You're absolutely right. There are products out there that make the surfaces last longer.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you how long it's going to last.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what the industry works with. The slurry seal that they may be talking about is rubberized emulsion.
I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is.
So if you recall, and Chris, if you feel like jumping in at any time, Chris, okay. The rubberized asphalt emulsion, there was a project that we had bid out last year, December, I think, and the bids came in considerably higher than what the budget was. almost twice as high as what the budget was. That can be done and prolong the life of the streets. However, you have to have those streets that you can prolong the life of. So, yeah, it can last, maybe it could last 20 years. But if your street,
Deteriorates.
yeah,
So,
you can only put a Band-Aid on it for so long, right?
I just,
But that's not to say that we haven't looked at stuff, and we don't always look at stuff. I mean, there's always something different that somebody's trying to encourage us to utilize. And we have to look at all this stuff. We work with the geotechnical engineers all the time to try to find different alternatives. Now, granted, the geotechs, they don't like finding different alternatives because they're the ones getting sued all the time. That's the honest truth.
okay.
So,
Well, thank you for,
you're welcome.
okay. Let's see. So thank you for the update. It's greatly appreciated for a number of reasons. Thank you so much. So now we go on to city reports. She's up in Sacramento, isn't she? Lee? Legislative Days up in Sacramento is where Councilmember Kuchwa is. Councilmember Meyer.
We had our Investment Oversight Committee meeting Monday, April 15th. We went over the investment report, the draft report for February, and that was what was presented tonight. Investment policy discussion. We do have a standing item on our investment policy in our ad hoc or in our oversight committee. And what we do is we go through items in our policy. So what we're doing now is picking items that are in our policy so that we can make sure that those checks and balances are in place. So it's going to be over time, but we'll have a project or two each time for the treasurer, the finance committee, or for the finance director, and then the oversight committee to gather the information so that we can make sure that the policy is being followed to a T. So that is the most, I don't know, that was the most exciting thing that we did. We also have a report that shows us our maturing investments that are coming up, so that is available. I encourage any of you guys to come. We meet every month, so the third Monday. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Percival.
RCA is on it'll be before the next meeting. Next week I'll be in Sacramento talking about housing, meeting with legislators. So I'll have more information after that and about different bills related to housing.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Basically, I have nothing to go over because I'm an alternate on these and
When did you change?
didn't have to. I know, I knew that was
Yeah. Planning Commission, actually, I think there's just one major item with regards to bringing back a business that was discussed the meeting prior. Of course, remember Ramona is playing. It obviously didn't play over Easter weekend, but coming back and forth next weekend and the following weekend. Let's see, I'm kind of the alternate now on League of Cities. Western Riverside Council of Governments, we actually talked about the assistance with the option to assist the regional housing needs and how WRCOG will play a role in that. And we also discussed the budget. SCAG, the conference is this next week, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of May. Western Community Energy Board, there was discussion with regards to how much energy savings we actually think that the residents could expect on the alternate energy option. A homeless task force, unfortunately, my husband had surgery yesterday and I didn't have anybody to cover for me to have that meeting, so it was canceled. But Mr. Webster's coming to the May 14th council meeting to present to council on the survey, on the study. Skate Plaza Task Force, we are having a community meeting, and what is that date again?
Tomorrow night.
Well, that's for us, but we expect,
So tomorrow night's our ad hoc.
right,
And then we'll schedule the community.
right.
Sorry.
But a community meeting is will be in the works after we have our ad hoc meeting where that study will be presented.
Right, I apologize. So yes, tomorrow night is our ad hoc, and then we'll take a look, we'll finalize that study and schedule the community meeting. Into the microphone. Sorry, legal.
Good. On the ad hoc committee reports, the Florida Avenue ad hoc committee, we are meeting on May 30th with Caltrans. Budget ad hoc committee, we met with interim city manager today, and we will be having more than one meeting now a month. We'll fit in as many as we can in the next couple of months. Special event funding ad hoc committee, is that done?
No,
Or do we?
I need to schedule that.
Okay,
I have a question on one of your, you said Paul Webster's coming
yes.
to present to us.
Yes.
Is he working for us again, or he's just
No, it's just
giving us a,
what we've been owed since way back after the
Oh.
study was done.
I thought he did that.
No, he's just presenting on what was done way back and never had a chance to come and do what needed to be done. So he will be here. Interim City Manager Lopez.
The only item that I have is, you mentioned it, the meeting with Caltrans, and then I actually had the opportunity to go to the WRCOG TAC meeting Thursday morning, I believe it was, and the WRCOG fellows presented to the TAC about their experience with working in different cities. So we're going to be looking at seeing if we can get a couple fellows at the city of Hemet. So that is an opportunity that we will be looking forward to in the near term. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Future agenda items. None? I do want to mention too that I think it's time that we have a community town hall meeting with regards to homelessness, and where staff can present, we can get input from the public, and I know that the budget is the priority right now, but as soon as we can find the time to really schedule, or to plan and schedule that particular event, we will do that. Let's see, now we'll need to go into closed session.
And I'll have, you to report on those items and recommend adding something to that for you.
Okay?
Council, you did not get to your closed session items during your study session. That means that we do have the full closed session. There is one conference with legal counsel with regard to one matter of litigation, and then you do have a conference with your labor negotiators with regard to Hemet Bid Managers Association. With regard to that item, I've been informed by staff that we do have an item that arose subsequent to the preparation of the agenda that needs council's direction prior to our next meeting. So we will be asking you to add that. What we would like you to add is, in addition to Hemet Bid Managers Association, we need to talk with you about SEIU. And we would ask you to add as one of your designated representatives, Alicia Hicks, your HR manager.
Okay?
So we would need a motion to add that, and that requires a vote of all four of you.
Okay. May I have a motion to accept the additional item on closed session? So moved.
Second.
Please vote. And that passes 4-0.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming tonight.